Now let's work through some of the most important attribute properties in our dimension. For example, we want to rename each of our attributes as appropriate. We can eliminate the word key here just by changing the attribute name. We can either right-click on the name itself and select Rename, and then type in or eliminate characters to rename this, or we can select an attribute and go to the Name property in the Properties window. And attribute names ideally will be as short as possible while still retaining meaning. It does have an influence on storage and the optimizations that Analysis Services uses. So when we rename things, we're doing not only a favor to our users to create names that are meaningful, but we're also optimizing our storage structures for Analysis Services. So renaming is an important step. The other thing that we want to verify is that we're using the correct key columns and name columns. When we use the dimension wizard for creating this dimension, for example, we could specify the key column and name column for the leaf level attribute, the most granular attribute in this particular set of attributes. So we have the primary key establishes the product key here, and we have the name column for English product name. That's what we'll display when we go to the browser and look at the product column. We'll see the labels here are based on the product name column, the English product name column from our table, but the number of records that we have here will be unique keys. So for example, we see AWC logo cap 3 times, and that's because there are actually 3 records in our source database, each one with a unique key. So to prevent confusion to our users, we might want to include additional information in the product name to say maybe this was for a particular time period. So it depends on what our business requirements are for dealing with changes to dimensions over time. There's a phrase called slowly changing dimensions, where there might be some other attribute that has changed over time related to this particular product. Maybe it was recategorized, maybe those have different colors, and so forth. So we can decide whether it might be easier for users to distinguish between those 3 names by concatenating some other value into the product name and then using that as our name column for the dimension. Other things that we might want to do is make sure that the sort order is correct. So for labels, usually alphabetic sorting is appropriate. Now product category key here, remember we have the key values that are showing, but we want to display the name. So here we need to go to the category attribute, come down to the key column that's specified correctly as the product category key, but we need to set the name column value. And in this case we'll select English product category name. Similarly, for subcategory, we have the product subcategory key as the key value to uniquely identify each record, but the label that we want to show is the English product subcategory name. So anytime we make changes like this, after we're done making our changes, we would select the deploy option, which of course will reprocess our dimension, and then we can go to the browser page, reconnect, and then review the results. So here we have category with labels displayed. We have subcategory. Again, we're looking at the titles here. And notice that the sort order is not alphabetical here. So we need to make another change. We'll go back to the dimension structure, and we can look at the order by property specified for subcategory, and we can see that the order by property is set to key. It's displaying those labels in numeric order according to the key value, but if we want to sort alphabetically, we need to change the order by to name. And let's do the same for category. We have the key column was initially set there. We're going to change that to name. And if we look at each of the other attributes, we can see that those are also using the key values. But when we look at the key columns, we see that color is the key column. So the key column is not always the primary key for our table. Size also is set as the key column, and that's the order by property as well. So now let's double check our results. We'll deploy here. The dimension will be reprocessed, and then we can go to the browser and reconnect, and now we see with subcategory everything is sorting correctly. Category is all alphabetical now, and product, of course, was already alphabetical. When we had the key column and the name column specified, the dimension designer knew to set the order by property by default to name. One last property to point out here with respect to our key property, you can see that there's a key icon that identifies the column that's set as the primary key. There's a usage property that gets automatically set by the dimension wizard. One attribute within our dimension can be specified as the key attribute. Everything else will be specified as a regular attribute. So if we go to category or to color and so forth, we can see that the usage is set to regular.